Well, welcome officially to our first game of Ancient August, and that game is Caesar's War, the Conquest of Gaul, 58 to 52 BC, from Decision Games, and this is part of their mini folio series. And this particular game is a system of two games, I believe it's two, that exist that cover the ancient world. This one, obviously, Caesar's Conquest of Gaul. There's another one called Belisarius' War. That's about the reconquest of North Africa in the 6th century. We may play that one. We'll see how this goes. Here you can see the map. I've put it in one of my patented poster frames. It's 11 by 17. It's got all the things that you need on it. It's a point-to-point game. Here are the counters, half-inch counters. You've got the Romans in red and Julius Caesar, there he is. And the various confederations of Gallic tribes located throughout modern-day France and Belgium. Sorry about the light. And Britannia up here. Now, this is a Joe Miranda and Joe Youst design, and probably will not be the first time that those two are featured on the channel with a game, because I have another Ancients game that they did work together on that I would like to do as well this month if I can find the time. But this game takes place over, I believe, 14 turns, excuse me. I'm just doing the math there real quick. 14 turns. Each turn is about 6 months, and each turn features a Roman activation, essentially, and a Gallic activation. And it's a very simple system. This would make a really great travel game. You don't have to put the map in one of these frames. You could fold it up and put it in this bag, and this bag right here, you could just throw it in your luggage or whatever. Put the counters in some plastic. But it's also got cards. It is a card-driven game. Now, it's not card-driven in the way that you would think of like a Mark Herman Classic Ops Events CDG, but it does use cards to drive the action. And you actually don't have a hand of cards. Each side has a deck of cards that you shuffle before the game, and there's a series of things on each card that will allow you to do things on the map, and it's kind of dictated by those cards in the order that those come out. And so there's a lot of variety in sort of the way that the game is paced over, a couple different plays based on how you shuffle the deck and the way the cards come out. Now, what are the objectives here? Well, you've got the Roman army, like I said, with Caesar. He is obviously trying to conquer Gaul, essentially, and so the Roman player will win if he controls 4 barbarian fort spaces, and the fort spaces in this game are these square spaces. You can see these are regular countryside, these are fort spaces. There are advantages to defending in a fort space, and then you've also got some of these garrison markers here on the map as well. Does provide some combat strength. You can see a Celtic unit here. He has a strength of 3. That's how many dice he's going to roll in combat. It's Alesia. And over here you've got some Helvetii, and then a huge stack of Roman legions there. Each side also has a recruit box. Sorry about the focus. A recruit box, and these are where reinforcements are going to come into the game, onto the map, based on these card plays. Let me show you the cards, actually, since we're talking about them. Here's the bottom of the Roman deck. So each card, when it's your turn, you'll flip it over, and it will tell you what you can do. So, for example, this card says recruit 1 legion. That would mean take a legion out of the recruit box, put it on the map. There's also might be an event. So in this case, there's a battle event. The Romans would get 1 additional die roll if they make an attack on this turn. And then it tells you your movement allowance and what types of leaders can move. So in this case, you would see that leaders can move 4 spaces, all legions can move 4 spaces, and all auxilium units can move 4 spaces. So because it's 6 months, there's a fair amount of movement in this game, at least with this card, and you can move all the units of those types. There's also fleets, naval movement, as you can see here, and they'll get to move some number of spaces or some number of fleets. I believe with fleets, it is... I believe it's number of fleets. Yeah, so it's a number of fleets. So in this case, 1 fleet. And you'll make a roll to see if the fleet can actually move. You can only move from a port to a port with a fleet, so if it doesn't roll high enough, it can't move this turn. Port's indicated by these naval symbols here. And that's basically the game. You just keep going, you flip a card, you do what it says, then the other player goes, and if you're in the same space at the end of your movement, you have a fight. Combat tables right here. It's pretty simple. For each die that you roll, the number will tell you what happens. Units can either be full strength here, or they can be panicked, which means they're flipped over and they don't contribute to the combat, or they can just be straight out eliminated and sent back to the recruitment box. There are elite units in the game. They have slightly better results, and obviously, like I said, if you're defending in a fortress, you are unable to be panicked. So you've got to bring some overwhelming force in. The Romans can also, for their part, when they get them, build camps. And that has to do with fortifying whatever spot they're in if it doesn't have a fortification. Also, if they set up a camp next to a fortress, it negates the defensive benefit. You're basically besieging that fortress. And it also has a supply impact as well. There's a very simple supply system in this game. Basically, if you're more than 2 units in a space and you're not in a camp or a fortress, then you might take some attrition, or a port. You could be in a port. That will prevent attrition as well. So like I said, each side trying to conquer a certain number of fortresses. The Romans trying to conquer 4, I believe, and the barbarians trying to conquer 2. And I believe at the end of their turn, if that is the case, then they win the game. And yeah, at the start of their turn, excuse me. They start their turn in control of the requisite number of fortresses. They win the game. They also have had to defeat the opposing overall commander. So in this case, for the Romans, it's Caesar, and for the Gauls, it is Vercingetorix. And that's it. Pretty simple game, and we're going to play through it. This should be probably a fairly short video because the mechanics are not very hard at all. I'll demonstrate some of them to you, and then I'll just give you a narrative of what kind of happens here. Again, this is wanting to ease into Ancients August with something I haven't played in quite a while, and something that would show nicely on the channel as we get going. So away! All right, so here we are on turn 1, and the Romans always go first. Flip the card from their deck, and it's this one, and they just so happen to get one of their very best cards, which is De Bello Gallico, which is what is considered a campaign card, I believe. This is also a remove from play card, so if the Romans choose to use it, they have to remove it from the game. Now, it is very powerful. It lets them recruit some leaders, some legions, some auxilia units, garrison, fleets, and then it lets all those different types of units move quite a bit. So they have an option. Because it's a remove from play, they can play it now, or they can shuffle it back into the deck and draw a different one because it is so powerful. Now, this may be a mistake, but I have chosen to have the Romans play it. It allows them to get a bunch of manpower on the board and move in a bunch of different directions to try and put some pressure on the Gallic player, who has very few units out. They have the Helvetii here and the Celtii here. So the Romans are going to play it and remove it. They may come to regret that, but here we are. Caesar marched a large stack of forces here to the Helvetii fortress, and he's going to attempt to attack it this turn and see what kind of damage he can do. On the other hand, he also sent Labienus, not ever quite sure how to pronounce his name, over here to Gergovia, which only has a garrison, and so he sent Labienus with a legion here, and then we've got a couple of legions here moving on their own. They came over here to Uxulodunum, and we have an auxilia going to Liger, to kind of get in position for movements against Avaricum, or possibly moving this way into Belgae territory. So the way this works, we'll do it pretty easily. We start with the battle. We lay out the units, so we've got 2 units to 1 unit here. Now you roll to see who has a battlefield advantage, and this just means like who gets to roll first in the attack. Now, because the Romans have a leader, they get +1 to this roll. So I just rolled the dice, and we rolled snake eyes, but because Rome gets +1, the red Roman die, it's actually a 2, so the Romans get to attack first. So the Romans are going to take the dice. Now they're going to have this 9th Legion attack. They get to roll 2 dice, and we're going to consult the combat table after I roll this. So here's what we rolled. We rolled a 5 and a 1. The 1 is nothing, and the 5 would normally be a panic, and that would mean we would flip over this garrison. But because we are in a fortress, this garrison cannot panic, and so therefore it is the garrison's turn to roll. Garrison's going to roll 1 die as I send counters flying. The garrison rolls a 4, and the 4 is, I believe, is a panic. Barbarians attacking. No, the 4 is nothing. Normally it would be a panic on a 5 or higher, but the 4 is nothing. And then we go to the leaders, so they get to attack as well. Labienus, he gets to roll a die. He needs a 6. He rolls a 1. So a very ineffective combat here. Both sides may be playing it conservatively. All right, so we continue on. First round of battle is over. Battles don't end until either one side either panics or is eliminated, or it has no units left able to fight. So Romans, back to the top. I believe we just keep going because the Romans have the battlefield advantage. So they're going to start rolling with the 9th Legion, see if they can get a 6. They do not. They roll a 5 and a 4. Gergovian garrison rolls. They roll a 2, that's nothing. And Labienus rolls a 5. A lot of panics that aren't hitting. So back to the top we go. 9th Legion. And you can see how this goes, right? They just roll double 3s. Gergovia rolls a 1, Labienus rolls a 3, and so on and on we will go. I'm going to finish resolving this combat so you don't have to sit here and watch me roll dice ineffectively against each other, and then we'll move over to this combat, which should prove to be more interesting because there's going to be a lot more dice involved in this one, lots of legions, and the 10th Legion, who's an elite unit, as well as Caesar, who's an elite unit. And they roll on a different column on the table. You see that they actually eliminate on a 5 or 6, so they're quite valuable. So we're going to get on with that, and then I'll show you what the outcome is of this initial Roman thrust into Gaul. All right, well, after 6 months of campaigning and sieging, Labienus eventually won the Battle of Gergovia. It was a long slog, but again, remember these turns are 6-month turns. Conquered Gergovia. Caesar, with his force, wiped out the Helvetii, or subjugated them, I should say, and the Romans with a really strong initial push against the Gallic Confederation. Now it's the Gallic Confederation's turn, and they are forced on the first turn to take this card, which is the Helvetians Migrate. They get to recruit a Helvetii warband and then move Helvetians 2 spaces. However, the problem for them there is that Caesar has conquered Helvetii, and they are not allowed to put Helvetii pieces on the map except in Helvetii. So this card is not going to have much of an effect, and it's a very strong opening move from Caesar to really robbed the barbarians of some agency here on the first turn with his massive army, and it was all thanks in part to this De Bello Gallico card that gave the Romans a bunch of reinforcements to accomplish that. Romans making good progress, as you can see here, surrounding Alesia here, and we know how that ended up historically. Fortunately, the Gauls got this Gallic tribe rises, and as you would expect, the whack-a-mole begins. We got a couple of Celtic warbands here in Uxula Dunum, and they are now threatening to undo all of the Romans' progress in Gergovia, where they have left one legion as a garrison, but it's going to be 3-1 in terms of number of dice rolled. They could also come up here and attack Labienus, although he's got a couple of legions with him, so that probably is a little more risky. But they do get to move all the tribe that they chose to recruit this turn up to 2 spaces, and so they might be thinking about trying to take Gergovia back and forcing Labienus to turn back from Avaricum and deal with them. Well, it didn't go so good for the Gauls. They made the assault on Gergovia, this Roman legion, the Roman discipline coming into play. They took the battlefield advantage, and then on their first roll, rolled a 5 and a 6, which eliminated one of the warbands and panicked the other one who had to retreat. So, barbarians back to where they started. Well, the Romans drew the Sieges card, which allows on their attacks this turn to ignore the defensive benefit of fortresses for the barbarians, and they're allowed to move all legions 2 spaces. Originally, I was thinking about building a Roman camp in one of these spaces, but that would preclude the legion there from participating in this attack against the Celtii. And given that the bonus allows them to ignore that fortress, it might be prudent, although I think they might both want to converge here on Alesia and save the Roman camp for another time. The Romans do have to roll attrition here because they've got more than 2 units. They're going to roll it against the Auxilia. Let's see what happens there. They rolled a 1, he's fine. I think if they rolled a 5 or a 6. Oh, no, on a 1 or a 2, that unit's eliminated. So they actually lost the Auxilia to supply line problems. Okay. And now they've got the choice. Do they take the attack here with Labienus and Caesar from both sides, or do they build a Roman camp, or do they split that up? They could build a Roman camp here with 1 legion and move another one in. Good question, good question. I'm going to think about that, and then I'll get back to you and show you how the battle goes against the Celtii. All right, and the ultimate outcome was that Caesar and Labienus and their legions, including the 10th Legion, managed to boot the Celtii out of Alesia. They didn't manage to wipe it out. They did destroy the garrison, but they panicked this warband who retreated to Mosa. Meanwhile, this particular legion decided that they were going to build a camp here, which important because that gives the Romans some defensive benefit, and this space is the gateway, as you can see, to so many other parts of the map. So we're going into the barbarians' 3rd turn, and they turn over the Britanniae Raiders. They get a fleet, and the Britanniae, who are a pretty good warband. Let's get them out here. There's the Britanniae warband, and a fleet for the Britannia. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So they get to come into play anywhere in Britain. And I'm going to figure out how to set them up, and then they're going to get to move the Britannia fleet if they want, which can carry this warband. So we might see a reverse Operation Sea Lion, where the Britannia come to the aid of their Gallic brothers down here who are getting their butts kicked. Well, and just like that, the game has come to an end at the start of the Romans' turn. On this turn, they control 4 fortified positions in Gaul. Vercingetorix not on the map. And that was a very fast game, ended in just a year or two. The unfortunate part for the barbarians is they drew a card that basically wouldn't let them attack or try and take any of these positions back. And the Romans were just unstoppable. Barbarians unlucky with the draw that they got. The Romans super lucky they got their sort of big, huge, powerful card right at the beginning that allowed them to make sort of these moves right off the bat. And I guess you could say in this version of history, it was a very well-prepared campaign by Caesar, which just faced really no resistance. And so that's sort of a quick game of Caesar's War. You know, it's a small game. There's not really a ton of, I don't want to say not a lot of depth, but, you know, it's a very simple game. You're obviously at the whims of these cards coming up. You don't really have a choice to make in terms of what happens to you. You're just kind of keying off events. And if you get a bad shuffle, this is what can happen. The game can be over quite quickly. That said, I mean, I still like the game. It sort of creates the whack-a-mole feel of Caesar's campaigns that you would expect with barbarians popping up all over the place. I think the combat system is a little simplistic. Again, we're talking about a 6-month scale here, so it's really many battles and skirmishes, but it doesn't necessarily feel that way. But this is a super cheap game. You know, you're not going to break the bank buying this. And like I said, as a travel game, if you really love ancient Rome and you want to travel with a game that you can play, this game plays really well solo because there's no advanced knowledge of what's going to come up here. Variability as well in terms of the way the cards come out. Is it the most balanced thing in the world? I can't really say. I've only played it a couple times, and it seemed to be pretty one-sided in all of those times. And then the other thing I should mention here is this is a decision game, and this has some of the worst decision counters I've ever seen in my life. They were just a pain in the ass to pull out of the sprue. They're like kind of cheap and thin, and they bend really easily, and you can see some of them are kind of chipping on the side, so not the greatest quality. The map is fine quality. You know, the graphic design is pretty good actually for this type of game. But yeah, as a small sort of pocket-sized game, there are definitely worse ones out there, and certainly not a lot of pocket-sized games on the Roman period tackling maybe this subject. So, you know, you can't really do wrong here. Like I said, this is the Ancient Wars series. There's another one that uses the same system about Belisarius's reconquest of Vandal Africa. So if you like what you see here, this might be something that, you know, might find a place in your collection. If you're sort of a heavier gamer, you know, this would only really be good for you if you're looking to play something small and quickly. Now, I will say that this could be good to get someone who's interested in the period, who doesn't play war games, playing something with you. You could teach this game in like 5 minutes. You could play the game in, you know, as you saw here, this took about 20 minutes. Or, you know, if it goes the length, if it goes the distance, it might be, you know, an hour at most. But you could get someone who's interested in the period who wants sort of a game to play that's not super thinky, that's not going to like exhaust them mentally, but really likes the period. This, you know, this is not a bad choice. It's not a bad game by any means. It's just clearly, you know, it doesn't have sort of the depth that a more complicated game on this subject like Caesar, Rome versus Gaul from GMT would have. That said, they both kind of achieve the same thing, the same feel, and doing it in kind of different ways, so that's pretty interesting. And all in all, I hope you enjoyed this. We're going to be moving on to the next game, and it's going to be, chronologically, it's going to come right after this, actually. It's going to be Antony versus Cleopatra from Hollenspiel, and we're going to look at the sort of the end of the age of the triumvirate during the end of the Republic. So, thanks for watching.